Hey kindergarten, I'm sitting here with my friend Mr. D and his delicious donuts. What sound does delicious donuts begin with? Oh, Mr. D thinks you know it. D, 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 not duh, duh, right? We gotta catch that on the end. We just wanna say d, d, delicious donuts. Excellent. What? What's that? Oh, Mr. D wants to tell you a story about a time that he and his delicious donuts worked together to solve a problem. Oh, right. He tells the story. He put the story on a record player like we used with Mr. L so we can hear his voice and we can hear the voices of his dainty donuts and those of his friends and the donut detectives. We're going to learn about Mr. D's situation, I should say, by reading the story. A Dozen Delicious Donuts. It's written by Elaine Rice and Rita Friedman. Elaine actually would be the author of the book. She signed the book for me. Look at that. That's called an autograph. If Elaine wrote the words along with Rita, that makes them the authors. Excellent. It's illustrated by James Rossi. That means he did what? He drew the pictures. Excellent. All right. Well, Mr. D, are you ready to share your story with us? Good. All right. I'm going to use my trusty old record player here. Remember with Mr. L's story, this is how when I was a little boy, we listened to stories on records and we listened to music on records, kind of how you guys listen to them on your parents' iPhones now. This was what we used when I was a little boy. So let's set it carefully on the record. And we'll begin listening to Mr. D's story. Here we go, Mr. D. Are you ready? Good.
How would you like a dozen delicious donuts? I mean, how would you like a story about a dozen delicious donuts? All right. Let's see what happens. Once upon a time, every donut had a hole. Then, one day, everything changed. This is how it happened. Mr. D was decorating donuts. He had dishes of coconut, chocolate, and sugar. Mr. D dipped and dabbed each donut. After the dipping and dabbing, the donuts danced to the mirror. They turned round and round. They wanted to see if Mr. D had done a good dipping and dabbing job. If Mr. D missed even one little spot, they ran back for another dip or dab. Daisy Donut said,
"Don't I look dazzling?"
Danny Donut said,
"Don't I look dandy?"
Next came the most important part. It was time to go to the donut dentist. He could make a perfect donut hole. One at a time, the donuts sat down. The dentist drilled the donut hole. Then the donuts were ready to be packed. 12 donuts danced into each donut box. A dozen donuts were ready to be delivered. Suddenly, trouble started. A dozen delicious donuts had a discussion.
"I do not want to be dipped and dabbed,"
said one delicious donut.
"I do not like coconut on me. It makes me itch."
Said another donut.
"I am allergic to chocolate.
Said another.
The sugar gets in my eyes."
Said one more. Then the smallest donut spoke. She was a darling, dainty donut. She said,
"I don't mind dipping and dabbing. I like coconut, chocolate, and sugar. I'm just afraid."
Afraid of dipping
asked the other delicious donuts.
Oh no!
Answered the dainty donut.
I know you will think I am silly. You see, I'm afraid of the donut dentist.
The dainty donut was sure that the others would laugh at her, but no. Each donut said something surprising.
Coconut doesn't really make me itch.
Said one.
I am not allergic to chocolate.
Said another.
Sugar does not get in my eyes.
Said a third.
You're not? It doesn't? I don't understand.
Said the dainty donut.
Why did you say those things?
The delicious donuts all answered together. They said,
We are really afraid of the dentist. I thought I was the only one.
squealed the dainty donut.
Let's not go to the dentist.
Shouted the donuts. Together they went to tell Mr. D about their decision. Mr. D heard the donuts coming.
We don't want to have holes.
They cried.
We won't go to the donut dentist.
Mr. D could hardly believe his donut ears.
A donut must have a hole.
He said,
If you do not go to the dentist, you cannot be delivered.
the dozen donuts had another discussion. Together they made a decision. Then, 2 by 2, they disappeared. The donuts decided to deliver themselves. They stopped at the first house on the street. 2 donuts rang the bell. The others watched. A lady opened the door.
Donut delivery.
Called the 2 donuts.
Donuts? Where are donuts?
Asked the lady.
Down here.
Smiled the 2 donuts.
You? Donuts?
Laughed the lady.
Who ever heard of a donut without a hole?
The lady slammed the door shut. The donuts had tears in their eyes.
What happened?
Asked the other donuts.
The lady says we are not donuts if we don't have a hole.
They sobbed. The dozen donuts went from house to house. Each time the same thing happened. Someone would look at them and say,
A donut is not a donut without a hole.
the dozen donuts were very discouraged. They sat down and cried great donut tears. It was getting dark. Mr. D was worried about the donuts who had disappeared. Where could they be? He decided to call the donut detectives.
Look for a dozen delicious donuts.
He said. The donut detectives did not delay. They sniffed and whiffed and sniffed again. They followed a delicious donut smell. And there sat the donuts in a puddle of tears. The donut detectives dried the donuts. Then they drove them back to Mr. D. Mr. D was very angry with the donuts.
How could you disgrace me?
He cried.
Donuts should never be seen without a hole. Just look at you. Dear, dear, why did this have to happen to me?
It's all my fault.
Said the dainty donut. She told Mr. D the story from the beginning. When she was finished, she cried,
The people say we are not donuts. We are donuts, aren't we, Mr. D?
Of course you are donuts.
said Mr. D.
You just look a little different. Don't be afraid. You do not have to go to the donut dentist. We will think of something special for you.
Just then, the donut saw something on the desk.
What is that in the dish?
She asked. Oh, that is a dish of jelly,
said Mr. D.
Many people want jelly donuts. I tried dipping and dabbing jelly, but the jelly drips through the hole.
That gave the dainty donut an idea.
I've got it.
She said, dancing to the jelly dish.
We can be the jelly donuts. We have no holes.
No,
Said Mr. D.
the jelly will rub off the top.
The dainty donut did not give up.
We can work in twos.
She said,
The jelly will be between two donuts. Please try it, Mr. D. Put some jelly on me. Now, put another donut on top of me.
Mr. D dabbed the two donuts together. It worked. Not a drop of jelly dripped. The donuts without holes were perfect. Everyone heard about the new donut style. Everyone wanted jelly donuts without holes. The dozen delicious donuts became world famous. Even the donut dentist was delighted.
All right. And that, my friends, is the end of our story. What did you guys think about it? See, like Mr. D told us, when we work together, you can solve a problem, right? Yeah, exactly. Excellent. Well, thanks for listening to my story, guys. Or I should say Mr. D's story. One thing I wanted to make sure that you guys thought about was, why was Mr. D upset? Yeah. It was because they left home without telling an adult. You always should tell an adult when you're going to go somewhere. You ask to go next door and play with the neighbors. Even if you're just going to go out into your backyard, you make sure that mom or dad or an older brother or sister or whoever the grown-up is that's in charge of the house, you always let them know where you are. Same if you go out to a store with somebody or to a restaurant. Never just walk away without asking first. You always want to make sure that the grown-ups know where you are. We want to keep you safe. All right? Thanks for listening to the story, guys. I'll be back with more and one of our other Letter People friends. Bye-bye.